Hello everybody, this is Hammer Striker here. Today I've got an interesting gun on the table. It's a Glock, I think. It looks a lot like a Glock, but it's the wrong color because, you know, we know that Glocks come in any color you want as long as it's black. But this one is a Glock. It's a Glock 19X, and it is the civilian version of the MHS trials, the U.S. Army's modular handgun system trials that Glock submitted. The military didn't accept it, but they are offering it to the civilian market. And it's kind of a cross between a 19 and a 17. It's got a Glock 17 grip on it, but it's got a Glock 19 slide length on it. And it's a Gen 5, so it's got the single pin trigger, and it has the ambidextrous slide stop slide release. And it also has no finger grooves. It has texturing, but no finger grooves. And it retains the replaceable back straps that the Glock Gen 4s have, and you get a lanyard loop. So it's got all of the features of the Gen 5 that you would have on any other Glock, but it's in this flat dark earth color that Glock calls Coyote. Even the box is Coyote. The magazines, they're all Coyote. And it comes with 3 magazines. It comes with the 17 round magazines, just like the Glock 17. And it comes with 2 of the 17 with a +2 base plate on it. So you end up getting 19 rounds. So with the combination of those magazines, you get a pretty good selection of capacity in it. When I mentioned the replaceable back straps, those are even the Coyote color. And like the later Gen 4s had, it's got 2 standard back straps. So if without a back strap, it's small, and then you get the medium and large. And then it's got 2 extended beaver tail back straps, and these all come with it. And of course you can change those out by just pushing out the pin right there with a Glock tool and, you know, either mounting the new back strap or swapping them out. Comes with the standard Glock style single slot Picatinny rail. One of the things that's unique about this one is it does have factory night sights, and they've got a kind of white ring around them, and they are true tritium based night sights. They're fairly easy to see. I find them a little more difficult to see under certain lighting conditions than the typical UDOT, but having that night sight capability is definitely, you know, a plus. And they're a 3-dot arrangement, and a lot of people don't like the normal stock Glock sights, but these 3-dot arrangements are more consistent with other sights that you see on the open market. And the sights are even metal, which is one of the complaints that people have, is they don't like the polymer sights, so they're metal sights. And other than that, you have the same reversible magazine catch that you have on all the Gen 4s, with the addition of the ambidextrous slide stop slide release. And it's the same basic split trigger configuration that Glock has. They list this as 5.8 pounds. It does feel a little bit different than the Gen 4 and earlier triggers. And of course, from a takedown perspective, it retains the same takedown. You pull the trigger, pull the slide back a little bit, pull down on these, and I'll show you that in a little bit. The barrel, which I'll talk about when I get it apart, is the Glock marksman barrel, which is somewhat of a hybrid between the polygonal rifling that Glock has been known for and standard land and groove that, according to Glock, gives, you know, increased accuracy and increased stabilization. I did find that this thing was easy to shoot well, and it was easy to stay on target. So at least at the distances we were shooting at for the filming of the video, it was pretty easy to shoot it, and it worked quite well. One of the things I will note, it doesn't have that cutout that the Gen 5, like the Glock 19 Gen 5 has. And that cutout there can be a problem for some people. Their pinky kind of goes into it. This one comes all the way down and it's smooth. So when you put the regular magazine in it, it's smooth like a Glock. It just kind of comes in and fits flush. And when you put one of the extended magazines in, you get basically a pinky extender. However, being a Glock 17 size grip, it's a full 3-finger grip for pretty much anybody, so that you really aren't using that extension piece of it at all. So overall, it's a well organized, a well set up gun. It's one that it might be a little hard to figure out, what would I use this for? When you're concealed carrying, it's the grip that's harder to hide usually. So from a concealed carry perspective, you'd want the grip shorter and maybe the slide longer. So you'd kind of figure it'd go the other way. If you're carrying it for a duty perspective, one of the nicer things about the shorter slide is when you're sitting down, it's less likely to bottom out on whatever it is you're sitting on and, you know, push back up on you. So if you're carrying this in an outside the waistband, in either someplace that you can open carry, or if you're carrying it as a duty gun, it gives you the capacity advantage and the grip, with a slightly more compact and easier to store slide as far as where you're going to put it. But in the concealed carry market, you might have a little less interest in this. It does make a nice range gun though. It's comfortable to hold and it's easy to work with. Disassembling it, as I mentioned, is just as easy as any other Glock. But actually, before I do that, one last thing, let's talk about the dimensions. It's 24.83 ounces, which is 704 grams. It's 7.44 inches long, 5.47 inches tall, and 1.3 inches thick. So basically, take the length dimensions of a 19, the height dimensions of a 17, same thickness as any other Glock, and you've got the overall dimensions. The barrel on it's 4.02 inches, and it is the Glock Marksman barrel. So let's go ahead and take this thing apart. So we verify that it's clear, we pull the trigger, kind of give it a little bit of a squeeze, pull down on the levers, and slide it apart. Internally, it's a little different than what you've seen before if you haven't seen a Gen 5. So it has the Gen 5 fire control group, which is laid out a hair different. The slide guides, they're the same, the locking block is the same, and the overall trigger mechanism is the same, even though the safety protrusion is, the drop safety protrusion is a little bit different because of the way they've structured it. I'll show you when we get to the slide. So this is a little bit different. And there is not really a good interchangeability between the Gen 5s and the prior slides and frames. They're, because of the drop safety and the way the fire control group is set up, they're not going to work well. You pretty much need to stay with the same generation. But overall, a typical Glock, there's nothing in there that isn't solely designed to make the thing function. And one thing I will note is this is a nice solid, both arms are nice strong solid pieces of metal, and it loops around. So unlike a few guns recently that have done the ambidextrous slide stop slide release, where one of them doesn't work well because it doesn't pivot properly or it hangs up or it's not strong enough, the Glock one does work well. Whichever one of these you grab, it's going to work 100% of the time. The slide, pop the barrel out, set that aside for just the moment. The slide is pretty much what you've seen before in a Glock. You can see the PVD coating. This whole coyote color is PVD, and you can see it does carry forward into the internals, and you can see the purplish hues from the heat treatment. PVD is a high temperature vacuum based process. The one thing you're going to notice that's different is the drop safety piston. It's kind of horizontal and ramp shaped instead of a round disc. And that's one of the things that's different between the Gen 5s and the Gen 4s. One of the things that would lead to some incompatibilities trying to do the slides. And the other thing is the cutouts at the back are different because you have this extra protrusion here in the fire control group. And that's the other thing that will prevent them from being readily cross-compatible. Dual recoil spring, just like any of the other Gen 4s. And on the surface, when you look at this barrel, it looks like just any other Glock barrel, and for the most part it is. There's a little bit of difference in the dimensions on the locking lugs, and that was something that was kind of different between the 19 and the 17. But overall, the barrel itself is basically the same thing. And when you look at the rifling, that's where it's a little bit different. You can see that it's got the characteristics of a polygonal rifling, but then you can also see the land and groove cuts, and the barrel's actually got a little bit of a crown too. So there's a little bit of differences in the internal of the barrel. And like the other Gen 4, the Glock 19 we've had, we're starting to see a little more wear along here than on the prior version, on the Gen 4s and earlier, but it's not eating into it. There's like, if I run my fingernail across it, I can't feel it. All I can see is that the surface of the coating has been polished or damaged a little bit, but it's not actually cutting into it. It's not affecting the function at all. And all in all, I really don't think it's going to affect the long-term durability or the reliability of it in any way. Putting it back together, typical Glock, drop the barrel in, put the recoil spring in, kind of just slap it with your thumb. It kind of tends to self-center itself. Slide it back onto the frame, and you've got a functioning Glock. So they're easy to take apart and maintain, and as they've gone forward in the newer generations, they haven't changed that. So let's talk about the trigger a little bit. Cycle it to bring the trigger into action. There's pretty much the standard Glock take-up. It's a little bit heavier take-up. The Generation 4s, the take-up seem to be just a little bit lighter. And then you get to the back, there's a little more creep in the wall, but it's smoother. The prior generations tended to have a little bit sharper wall and a little less creep. And then a relatively short reset, because that would be all the way back out. So again, take up, a little creep in the wall, break, reset, and then you're right on the wall. There's no bounce. A little bit of creep and the break again. So it's a really nice trigger. It's pretty smooth, and a lot of people like a little softer wall, which of course tends to bring with a little bit of creep. So it's kind of what you're used to. And of course the aftermarket will rapidly catch up with these, and you'll be able to get any variation of trigger that you want, the apex and everything else. So all that will be available. And one of the things I have yet to do with this is to put a minus connector in it. I have a tendency to put the minus connectors in. It takes about a pound off the trigger and sharpens up the wall a little bit, but I haven't done that yet with this one. From a price perspective, these are a little pricier than a existing Gen 4 Glock. It has an MSRP of $749, but you're often going to see it under $650. So, a lot of the times you can see the Gen 4s are readily available around $549, $550. I'm seeing this in the $650 territory. It wouldn't surprise me when it gets a little bit of time on the market and some of the interest in newness wears off. You'll probably find them under $600. One other thing I failed to mention, in some of the Gen 4, the early Gen 5s, they didn't bevel the frame. They beveled the slide and they didn't bevel the frame. Didn't affect function at all, but it did get a lot of hassling on the internet because it kind of looks stupid. What you had is a little bit of a shelf here. So you've got the beveling that you had on usually the subcompacts, the 26 and the 27, to make it easier to holster, and then the matching frame bevel. And that's one of the things that they kind of picked up and should have done on the other ones before. But at least they learned their lesson and picked up on that. So what I'm going to do is just show you from a size perspective. I happen to have, right here, a Glock 19. And surprisingly, I happen to have a Glock 17. So if I put them side by side, put the 19X up against the 17, you'll see that the grips are almost identical in height, and of course the slide is shorter. If I bring the 19 along, the 19 lines up perfectly with it, but of course the grip is shorter. So it really is the hybrid between the two. So if you left a 19 and a 17 unattended for a length of time in the safe, you'd end up with a 19X. The magazine interchangeability is there. It'll work with the various mags from the different generations. And of course, if you reverse the magazine catch, then you need to have Gen 4 or newer magazines. Otherwise, there isn't a notch on the magazine itself to catch the catch. And the only other thing I've noticed is that the colors don't match perfectly, but they do look good. It blends well. This has got more of a coppery goldish color in the Coyote, whereas this is more of just kind of a flat tan. And of course with the Coyote magazines and the Coyote backstraps and a few of the black controls, it actually is kind of a nice looking gun. So it may be Coyote colored, but it's not Coyote ugly. Overall, if you're looking for especially a range gun, a service gun, a nightstand gun, or something like that, and you want factory night sights, it might be a good choice. If you're looking for concealed carry, you might want to lean more towards the 19, the actual 19, get that shorter grip, and then carry a backup magazine if you need. But even on a 19 that carries 15 rounds, 15 rounds is going to get you out of pretty much any situation that you get yourself into, unless you find yourself in the middle of a terrorist infestation, and then 2 or 4 more rounds probably isn't going to make the difference anyway in that scenario. If you like our videos, please give us a thumbs up, share. Don't forget to check us out on Facebook and Patreon, and have a great day. Thank you.